Some stories exist to enlighten the mind, some to temporarily inspire hope or passion. But there is one set of writings meant to chill you to the bone, or make you question what is actually possible. These stories are called Creepypasta. The first sighting was 6 months ago. 2 kids went missing off of a popular walking path in the Smoky Mountains. A search party of 60 people went out in search of the children. Only 23 returned, all with the same strange and unbelievable story. A creature which reached the height of at least 40 feet, producing multiple sounds from its siren-shaped head. At first, many people thought it a hoax or mass hysteria, but after the authorities located the scene of the massacre, it was obvious that there was some truth to the story. In the end, with no proof of any giant monster, it was chopped up to a mistaken identity, claiming it must have been a bear or other woodland predator. That is, before more started showing up. My story begins on the 8th of June. At this time, more sightings had been reported all over the world, but none was accompanied with any video proof, as all claimed that the wailing sound produced by the creature shattered all devices within the sound radius. This was obviously very curious and led most people to compare this siren head to that of Bigfoot. The only difference was the occasional disappearance. I've never had the want or need to follow whatever craze or conspiracy that goes on each week on social media. Why should I? It'll all be forgotten within 7 days anyway. Plus, I had my father to give all my attention to. Taking care of someone with advanced Alzheimer's doesn't leave you with a lot of free time, especially free time to waste on something so ridiculous. Before this time, he had been in a nursing home, but due to his condition causing him to wander off the grounds, me and my brother were forced to take him in, especially considering we couldn't afford a home that could accommodate his condition. Me and my brother both decided to move into my grandmother's old house in the country to double team the task of making sure our father didn't find himself in the middle of a busy intersection. But the house being located on the edge of thick woods would soon become a much bigger problem. We had yet to experience his disappearing act, but the nurses at the nursing home alerted us to the signs, other than the fact that he was missing. There was one thing that he would always do before going on his adventures. He'd leave every article of clothing that he was wearing at the time at the entrance of the building, before escaping butt naked. My stomach dropped the day that I saw the front door wide open and a pile of clothes sitting in the threshold. I yelled for my brother and ran out the door to see no sign of my father. Considering I'd seen him 2 to 3 minutes prior to his disappearance and he was nowhere in sight, he had to have gone in the woods. I ran through the wood line into the shaded forest and turned to see my brother not far behind. We rushed, zigzagging through trees looking in all directions, but after what seemed to be hours, there was no sign of him. Just as we decided to turn back and call the authorities, we noticed a trail of blood. Obviously curious and fearing the worst, we followed the trail. It didn't take long to find the end, and what we saw will forever be burned into our retina. It was my father's body. Well, his body from the chest up. It was then I heard a strange sound coming from the clearing ahead. Something similar to an old-fashioned radio switching between stations. I followed the sounds to the one thing that I didn't expect. The creature that I'd heard so much about, but smaller. Maybe 3 feet tall and barely able to stand like that of a newborn baby deer. Its legs long and thin. It had rust-colored skin and the same unusually shaped head as mentioned. And it was eating the contents within the lower half of my father's body. I slowly picked up a large stick and tiptoed my way towards the creature. Just as I was about to swing, a twig snaps under my foot, causing the creature to turn and let out the most ear-piercing wail. I swing, knocking the monster to the ground unconscious, but not before its message was heard. Loud bipedal footprints shook the forest, followed by the cracking of trees. Knowing these creatures were no longer just a myth, I instantly yelled to my brother, "Run!" before picking up the youngling's body and hauling ass. We made it back to the house and instantly jumped into my brother's car, knowing this chase was far from over. Honestly, I don't know why I did it. Even with the atmosphere of things, my father, now dead even though he was gone a long time ago, I guess I just couldn't leave behind proof of something so incredible. But now we were being hunted. We made it 5 miles down the road and nothing but complete silence. No mention of our father's death or the murderous creature in the back seat. To break the silence, my brother switched on the radio, but unfortunately, how deep we were in the country, we had nothing but static. As he flipped through the channels, a frequency came through the speakers, bringing the creature back to life and with it the ear-piercing sound from earlier. I covered my ears and felt my eyeballs start to vibrate. The noise was deafening to the point that even with my ears covered, it was still unbearable. Unfortunately, as my brother drove, he didn't have the spare hands to cover his ears, and after a few seconds I noticed they started to bleed, before his eyes exploded like blood and goo-filled balloons. The car drifted to the right as my brother's body leaned lifelessly against the driver window. The car drove itself down the embankment, barely avoiding the guardrail before turning into multiple flips, landing on the edge of the small creek which went under the bridge. I was thrown from the car, along with the creature, landing side by side next to the water. The shrill sound continues from the creature's siren-shaped head, and I heard the familiar pounding of large footsteps. After seeing the trees in the distance start to part, I knew I had to silence this little creature, so I did the only thing I could think of. I maneuvered my hand through the wires on its neck and grabbed it by its throat, shoving it over the edge into the water. It thrashed around as its sounds broke through the surface of the water before turning into a gargle, and then nothing. All was quiet. No wailing from the creature in my grasp or stomps from its parent. That's when I turn and see it. Crouching at the edge of the bridge was the most terrifying sight I'd ever seen. It stared as I held its child's lifeless body under the water. I released its throat, ready to run as the 40-foot monstrosity lets out an ear-piercing scream before getting on its hands and knees, scrambling to reach me under the low bridge, barely able to fit. Its long arms reaching out for me, scraping the ground inches behind me. The infant creature's body floats to the bottom of the creek as I frantically make my way to the side of the bridge opposite from the monster now trying to get me. I make it up to the road where I miraculously find a car coming in my direction. I stand in the road and get their attention, jump in and yell at them to drive. I twist my head around just as the creature emerges from the underside of the bridge and lets out a sound that vibrates the windows of the car, and then we were gone. "What the fuck was that thing?" the driver asked. I could only answer with one word. Siren head. I know most of you won't believe this story because, like me at one time, this is just too insane to believe. 40-foot monsters with sirens for heads. But as I kneel, fishing the body out of the creek, I have all the proof I need to show you the truth. The truth that these creatures exist, and if you're smart, you'll stay as far away from the woods as humanly possible. I hope you enjoyed tonight's story. A lot of you asked me to write a Siren Head story. I jotted one down real quick. I hope you liked it. If you did, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification. There's a lot of buttons. You know all the ones you need to hit, not the one with the thumbs down, because, that's not good. Also, if you're on Twitter and you like to see things that are remotely funny and mostly inappropriate, then you should definitely follow me on Twitter, Dr. Heinous at Twitter. Some shit. Links in the description. And we'll see you next time.